Hello everybody and welcome to my Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War All Substitutes Ranked Run. Now that title is pretty long, so let me break it down. When I say all substitutes, I'm referring to the mechanic in this game that lets your units get married and have children that you can play as. Naturally, if your units don't get married, they won't have children, but in this game in particular, the game will still give you other units as substitutes for the children. These substitutes are some of the most worthless units I have ever had the displeasure of playing as in any Fire Emblem game, so it just makes this game quite a bit harder. Now, when I say ranked run, I'm referring to the mechanic at the very end of the game that assigns a letter grade from A to E in various categories based on how well you've played. An A rank is the best that you can achieve, and an E is the worst that you can achieve. So our objective for this playthrough is to force ourselves to use all substitute units, whilst at the same time achieving an A rank in all the categories. This is probably one of the most tedious Fire Emblem experiences that I have ever partaken in, but I have recorded it for your enjoyment. So let's get started. To start, I will briefly recap some of the mechanics in this game, such as the pairing mechanic to get your units married and the ranking system. This is by no means an in-depth explanation of all the mechanics in this game, so I'm assuming that you guys know at least a little bit about Fire Emblem. The way the pairing system works in this game is that every pair of compatible units will gain points at the end of each turn. Pairings will gain more points if they stand next to each other at the end of each turn, and if you trigger some special events. Once a pairing achieves a certain number of points, they will be considered to be lovers, and they will produce a child that you can play as later on in the game. In this playthrough, the objective will be to prevent this, primarily by ensuring that compatible units don't stand next to each other, and also not triggering those special events. There are two pairings that are forced upon us by the game's story, so those are unavoidable, but I'll point those out as they come. The ranking system is split into 4 categories, and our objective is to achieve an A rank in each of them. The first ranking is Tactics, which requires you to just complete the game in less than 400 turns. The next is Experience, which requires you to gain 1000 levels across all of your units. After that is Survival, which requires you to make it to the end of the game with all units alive and recruited. Finally is Combat, which requires you to have 3 or fewer battle losses. Which sounds the same as Survival, but in practice it's different in the sense that if you load a save after a unit dies in battle, the game will still count it as a battle loss unless you restart the entire chapter. Because as a reminder, in this game you can save at the beginning of each turn, and those saves are not just bookmarks as they are in newer Fire Emblem games. They're actual saves which you can reload over and over and over again. In terms of battle mechanics, the thing that sets this game apart from the others is the fact that follow-up attacks and critical hits are explicit skills that not all units have. Meaning that some characters may never be able to perform a follow-up attack or a critical hit unless they have the pursuit and critical skills respectively. There are minor exceptions to critical hits that I'll point out as we encounter them. And now it's time to briefly go over the characters that we have. We've already seen our starting 4 characters in action: Sigurd, Alec, Noish, and Arden. Sigurd is the pre-promoted unit, and he has the pursuit skill and is easily the best unit in this game. Alec is one of the unpromoted cavaliers that has the pursuit skill, along with another skill called Nihil that negates the enemy's battle skills such as critical hits. Noish is the other unpromoted cavalier that doesn't have the pursuit skill, so he's by default not that great. However, he does have the critical and accost skills, the latter of which gives him a random chance of engaging in an additional round of combat with the enemy. So a worse version that's RNG based of pursuit. So yeah, he's not that great, but he's not as bad as Arden, who is the knight that is insanely slow right now because he doesn't have enough speed to move quickly on the map. Yes, that's an actual thing in this game, and it only applies to Arden, so they did that just to screw with Arden. But he does have the Vantage skill, which lets him attack first on enemy phase if he's at half health or lower, and that's all the good things I have to say about him. Up north, we have 2 other units that just joined, Lex and Azel. Lex is an Axe Knight with the Vantage and Paragon skills, the latter of which gives him double the experience. That's a really good skill, but I still would have preferred that he have Pursuit. But Azel does have the Pursuit skill, and he's a mage. Now, they may seem like decent characters, but they use really heavy weapons to start, which in this game, weight decreases your speed, so they're actually pretty slow and not that great. And finally, we're just meeting all sorts of new characters now. We have 3 more characters, Quan, Ethlin, and Finn. So Quan is another pre-promoted unit, much like Sigurd, who uses lances instead of swords. And he has the Adept skill, which randomly allows him to attack twice, which is yet another worse version of Pursuit, so he's not as good as Sigurd. Ethlin is primarily a healer who can secondarily use swords, and she also has the critical skill and nothing else. And Finn is a Lance Knight who has the Pursuit and Miracle skills, the latter of which allows him to increase his chances of avoiding an attack for a turn when he's at 10 HP or lower. Now, Quan and Ethlin are a pairing that's forced upon us by the game, so we'll have to play as their kid later on. But the upside to that is that being a pairing increases your critical hit rate, so long as the pairing are within 3 tiles of each other. What this means is that even though Quan doesn't explicitly have the critical skill, he can still land critical hits so long as he's within 3 tiles of Ethlin. And Ethlin just gets a higher chance of a critical hit so long as she's within 3 tiles of Quan. In addition to the pairing critical hit bonus, Sigurd and Ethlin are siblings, and siblings in this game also get a similar critical hit bonus. So Sigurd can land critical hits so long as he's within 3 tiles of Ethlin. As if Sigurd needed to be even better than he already is. Now, one thing you've definitely already noticed is that the gameplay is very fluid and smooth right now, and that's because I've used a task program to edit my gameplay in order to make things move along as fast as possible. So anytime that I spend strategizing and planning is not shown, and all you'll see is a continuous stream of precise inputs. And in addition, to make things more interesting for myself primarily, I've decided to abuse the RNG in this playthrough. What this means is that I'm able to see what random numbers the game will generate and essentially predict the future. And I've also put the random numbers on the side of the screen so you can see what the current random number is, what the future ones will be, and what the past ones were. So now I can basically get whatever combat results that I want or whatever level ups that I want. In practice, it's a kind of a pain in the ass to actually do that, and this game isn't that difficult to necessitate it. So I actually ended up using this power a lot less than I thought I was going to because I'm lazy and this is already insanely tedious. So, whatever. But this still may seem like cheating, and it is. But like I said already, this playthrough is insanely tedious, and it's even more boring to watch. So I wanted to do something to make things more streamlined, to make things more fluid, and to make things a little more interesting with the RNG. That didn't end up working out that well, but whatever. So That's what we got right here. Trust me, I tried to do this as normally as possible before, and it was insanely boring for me to edit. So this is hopefully more interesting for everyone involved. This does give us the opportunity to make someone like Arden more useful, but if you can make Arden more useful, you can also make Sigurd really useful, so in the end, it doesn't really matter. Speaking of RNG, it's worth pointing out that the RNG in this game is actually completely deterministic and always generates the same numbers in the same sequence. So it's theoretically possible to do 2 identical playthroughs of the game, even though in practice and in casual play, it's highly improbable. But that's just another one of this particular game's quirks. There's also other mechanics in this game that makes this one a little bit different than other games, but the most important ones I'll go ahead and rattle off right now. First is the fact that this game engages in glorious capitalism, in the sense that money is not in a communal pot that your entire army draws out of. Instead, each unit has their own set of money. And second, there's no trading items in this game. So if a unit has an item that another one wants, then you have to sell that item to the pawn shop and then have the other unit buy it back with their own money. What this means is that money is a very important and very scarce asset that needs to be carefully allocated. In terms of general strategy for this particular playthrough, the most important thing is going to be the experience rank, because that's one of the most difficult A ranks to fulfill. Which means that we're going to want to feed kills to our weaker units, such as Arden, Azel, Alec, and Noish, instead of Quan and Sigurd, let's say. The most important thing is to maximize the chances of everyone getting through the arena later on, which I'll explain what the arena is when we get there. For units like Ethlin who are healers, we're not too worried about them because healing staves in this game give you experience, and stuff like the Warp Staff and the Return Staff give you a lot, so they're not a big issue. But at the same time, we don't want to take too many turns because the tactics rank is also a thing, but it's pretty lenient in this game, so I'm not too concerned about it. As I've mentioned before, we also want to make sure that we're allocating our money properly, and that means we want to strategize who to let save the villages in order to receive their gold rewards and any items they may give. This will become more important later on when we have to pass around the Paragon Band, but it doesn't hurt to get a head start in this chapter because there are a couple villages here. Another thing I want to briefly discuss here is the enemy's AI. As we can see here, the enemies are all going after Arden because Arden is at low HP, and also because he's Arden, so he should be a very easy target. Let's be honest, this is the most anyone has ever used Arden in any playthrough. But we use this to our advantage because Arden does have the Vantage skill, and the enemies are also at low HP, so Arden can actually kill a lot of the enemies before they can attack him, which is awesome. And it's also very convenient that the enemies want to go after Arden because of his low HP. Now, in general, the enemy tries to maximize the damage they do and minimize the damage done to them, and in general, if they are able to kill a unit, they'll try to, but in general, if they have 0 hit, they won't even bother attacking. Certain units are hardwired to do certain actions as well, such as pirates will always go after villages, and the 3 units in front of the castles won't move, amongst other things. But this is also in general, so it doesn't apply everywhere because the enemy AI can do whatever the hell it wants. Oftentimes, you'll see slightly different AI for different groups of enemies, and I'll try to point out the more interesting ones, but just be aware that there's no universal enemy AI behavior in this game. Like, apparently even the position of your items in your inventory affects enemy AI. So there's going to be no rule that applies to every single enemy here. If you're playing casually, just don't worry about it because the game isn't that difficult in a casual setting. But if you're doing something stupid like I am, you can just use trial and error and it'll probably be fine. With that, we have captured Jungbi Castle, and that will end off this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next part where I'll be talking about some other nonsense. Take care.